The world-famous Butch and Bob Show.
World famous Butch and Bob Show right here on WIFO 105.5 FM in Jesup, Big Dog Country Radio. Bob, I had a feeling you would go with the Chiefs, and you did. I mean, how can you pick against Patrick Mahomes?
I just can't see Patrick Mahomes losing this ball game. That's just me. Andy Reid. We'll see how it plays out. Should be a great game. They say all the money's on Kansas City, though, so that's a bad sign.
All the money's on Kansas City, but how can the 49ers still be a 2-point favorite? I don't understand that.
Somebody's got a lot of money on them, so I'm looking forward to it. Looking forward tomorrow night. Win $10,000 and then get ready for Super Bowl Sunday.
For that touchdown club?
That's my plan.
Get together tomorrow night at the country club?
Got my fingers crossed anyway.
Yeah, maybe you'll get it this year, Bob.
Yeah,
there's always next year for you.
Chances are slim and none in Slim Lift Town. So that's right. But no, I still got hope.
Okay. Well, we've got a special guest in the studio with us this morning. Bob, who do we have?
It's hard to believe, but this is an election year. We've got all kinds of races coming up. Race for sheriff, solicitor, clerk of court, probate judge. Qualifying starts March 4th today, so we're less than a month away from qualifying. But one race is going to be the district attorney's race. The incumbent Keith Higgins has announced his candidacy for re-election, but John B. Johnson, longtime assistant DA, is in the studios with us. He's decided to run. So the first question is, why have you decided to put your hat in the ring for this position?
You know, I spent roughly 40 years working as an assistant DA with 3 different district attorneys. And I learned about the process that we go through to make sure that cases get disposed and get dealt with the way they ought to be dealt with. Since January 1st of 2021, all that has gone away. The process that's going through now is just cases are laying out there and nothing being done about them. And there comes a point in time when you just have to step up and say, I can do it better.
And you're running as a Republican. You've been a long time.
That's correct. So
what made you switch?
What do you mean switch?
You were a long-time Democrat for a long time. So.
In 1996, I did run as a Democrat.
Right.
I'll take you back to 1994 when I supported Barry Goldwater, actively supported him in his presidential campaign, and I lost a bet in that. But then in 96, I ran as a Democrat. And Steve Kelly, who was a Republican at that time, won and hired me, and I've worked with Republicans for the last 25 years. And there was no choice in my mind. I think the Democratic Party for South Georgia has left us. We all used to be the Dixiecrats, the conservative end of the Democratic Party, but now they've reached a point where they're just doing things that we don't believe in.
Got a ton of things I want to get into. Let's start with, you recently spoke at the Republican Party, is that correct?
Yes.
I was looking at this race. Like I said, you worked for 3 assistant DAs. The one assistant DA, the last assistant DA, last DA you worked for was Jackie Johnson.
Correct.
And then the race last time between her and Keith Higgins, it basically came down to Glenn County.
Correct.
I said Jackie took Wayne County, took Appleton County, took Jeff Davis, but Glenn County and the Albemarle case blew up. And so, of course, you're going to be tied to Jackie Johnson. So how do you overcome that in Glenn County?
Well, I don't know that I'm tied with Jackie Johnson in that respect. For the most part, when she recused the office from handling or dealing with that case, even though I was her chief assistant at that point in time, I had no further involvement in it, none. Was not even called before the grand jury when they considered indictments in that case. So I've made a name for myself. I am myself. And in all of the meetings that I've had with people down there, that really has not come up. And it's interesting that the support for her is still, in the Republican Party in Glenn County, is still there.
Well, correct me if this is wrong, because I said I wasn't at that meeting, but I heard you made a couple of statements, so I just want to see if they're true, and if you can say they're true or not true. But one thing I heard, going to Jackie Johnson, you stated at the Republican Party meeting that in your opinion you didn't think she did anything wrong.
That is correct.
Did you make that statement?
Yes.
So if you were a DA, would you have handled anything differently, or would you have done the same thing?
Well, it depends on what you mean, done the same thing. Under the circumstances, I would have had to recuse the office. Yes, absolutely. The question then becomes how much involved on the sideline do you get? That was a very high-profile case. Probably, in retrospect, she needed to get more involved in saying, this is what we can do, this is what we can't do. The biggest issue was that everybody wanted Jackie to order the arrest of Travis or Greg McMichael. And once we recuse ourselves, you can't do that. And we don't have the power to do that. You have to go through a grand jury, or the law enforcement has to go through a judge to get an order or a warrant to be able to do that. We just don't have that power. I think had that been more forcefully impressed on people, it might have been different. It was still a national story, and you just have to be very careful.
I've stated time and time again, two things that just I don't understand. Barnhill, who she sent it to in Waycross, wrote a written statement after he saw the video. He claimed it was self-defense. Nothing happened to him. And the other thing I don't understand is I've never seen a place anywhere where officers show up and there's a guy dead in the street and the guys are holding a gun and they go, what happened? It's self-defense. Oh, yeah, I'll go home. Why aren't those police officers in?
Well, it's a little more involved in that. And I have to talk about what I've heard, what I've read in the paper, what I've seen on the news, what people talk about. The investigation was more involved than that. As far as the Greene County Police Department, I don't have any fault with what they did. Having worked with them, I know what they went through. Having George Barnhill come in was a part of the normal process that we had at that time. If you recused yourself, you asked for a district attorney to come in from a contiguous circuit and to help you, and we went there to them, and that was approved by the Attorney General. Then when a complaint was made about George, which was of no consequence really legally, he chose to remove himself, and which for him was the right thing to do. But at this point, everything was followed as we were doing it as we were supposed to do. It became a national news story with 7 seconds of video that.
Well, one more thing from the Republican Party meeting. Like you mentioned you mentioned the Attorney General.
Right.
Somebody said you made some comments about him, about he made some statements in a church somewhere. Is that true? Can you explain that?
I made that statement, yes.
I've talked to the Attorney General. He says that most churches videotape or record these events, and he wants to know what church and what they.
I base that statement on hearsay, on what someone told me who was there and said that he made the statement that he was going to get Jackie Johnson. Of course, he was running for Attorney General at that time. Parenthetically, he's running for governor right now.
Like I said, we know him well. Like I said, he claims that he wants to know where that's because he's claiming that was
okay.
So I want to know what tell me what you think the job of the district attorney is, because one case. I want to start with the harder case. And I think that card. This case is investigated by law enforcement, investigated by the GBI. They seek an indictment. They get an indictment. They hand down indictments, murder, several other charges, and then all of a sudden it's just dropped. How does the district attorney do that? Where's the justice for those families and so-called alleged victims? I mean, do they have any recourse at all? I mean, it was just dropped, gone.
Well, there is recourse. Murder has no statute of limitations, so a new district attorney can always take a look at it and re-indict it and re-prosecute it.
And refresh my memory, did Jackie Johnson's office indict that, and then the DA after the election drop it? Is that
we indicted it?
That's what
yes.
I thought, right? So it was indicted under Jackie Johnson's regime, right? And the new DA after the election comes in, and he just drops it, right?
The process that you go through as a prosecutor, especially, I mean, if you're an administrator, which is what he said on this show, he's not a trial lawyer. But I grew up with district attorneys being the trial lawyers. If you remember, Glenn Thomas Jr. tried cases.
Yeah, I'm the same way. I've been in this job a long time and watching court cases all the time, and it's just amazing to me that he doesn't prosecute cases. Like I said, going back to Glenn Thomas, Stephen Kelly, Jackie Johnson, they take the high-profile cases and they prosecute them in court.
That's
correct. That's part of the DA. This guy claims he's just an office manager and hires other people to do the cases.
Well, we hired an office manager a lot cheaper than we got one now. But district attorneys are supposed to be hands-on people. You're also an administrator. You work with your personnel. You have to be a good leader. You have to treat your personnel right. You have to try a case. You have to have the experience to evaluate a case and make a decision. Dismissing a case is easy. I mean, you can, for whatever reason you want, you can dismiss a case because you have some discretion. The problem is that cases that should be dealt with by the grand jury are not being dealt with. They're just being allowed to sit and wait. And it's sad that victims are not getting their justice, what they are entitled to, because you have an administrator and not a prosecutor.
There's some real high-profile cases that are just, in limbo right now, and I saw Judge Steve Kelly, who used to be a DA at the Eggs and Issues breakfast, and I asked him, where are these what's going on? He told me that he's stated to the current DA that as a former prosecutor, the longer cases sit on a shelf, the worse it is for the state to be able to prosecute. It goes back to the old statement, the old clerk of court, Stetson Bennett, told me, in time, memories fade, evidence gets lost, witnesses die, and sooner or later there ain't no case. And the three cases in particular I'm talking about, the big high-profile case is the John Jankowski case. Mm-hmm. And we've reached out to the District Attorney Keith Higgins. I want to read this statement he gave us back. He says, he says, I'm currently reviewing the GBI case following John Jankowski, which involves listening to hours of recorded interviews. The Wendell Tank Lawson case is related to my review of the Jankowski investigation, and I'll make a decision regarding both cases when I have reviewed all written reports, reviewed all written statements, listened to all recorded interviews. Asked about the Michael Baker case, that's the fire chief, or the fireman that has been arrested for several counts of rape. That's still sitting in limbo, too. He says we received the GBI case file on there by January 11th. That case is being reviewed. What needs to be reviewed? I mean, that's why my question, what needs to be reviewed? The GBI conducted these investigations, made the arrest, filed the charges. The next step, as far as I've been watching court cases all these times, is to take it to the grand jury and seek an indictment.
Well, that's what we would have done.
What are we doing? And this John Jankowski case, this is what I don't understand. After the protest they had at the courthouse where the women were upset, nothing was being done, then they called the GBI in to conduct an investigation. My question is, why do they have to have an investigation after the state in court with Assistant DA Tiffany Montenegro, not once but twice, argued that bond be denied in the case? The state, and this is the state, this is his Assistant DA Tiffany Montenegro, who all of a sudden has disappeared. Now she's in private practice. But she argued in court twice, stated they had 11 women, sworn affidavits, where the defendant sexually assaulted them. They stated in court that he went to that restaurant and drugged an undercover agent, and they stated in court that the undercover agent went to the hospital, had drugs in her system, and they stated in court the same drugs in her system were the same drugs found in his truck. So why isn't that case being indicted? What are we doing with the GBI investigation? What's going on?
Well,
explain to me as a former DA what's going on.
The process that we normally would have followed, if you were working with law enforcement, and as we used to do, you would have been involved in all of that. You would have known up front basically what we were doing. So we would have either indicted that case and then gone and made arrests, or we would have indicted it within 2 or 3 weeks, because we had regularly scheduled grand jury meetings where we were presenting 10, 12, 15 cases at a time, and we would have done that. That was the normal process. You don't let cases sit unless you have an intention to not do anything with them. And it's interesting that we're dealing with rape charges both in John Jankowski, or attempted rape in John Jankowski and Tank's case, and rape charges with the former fireman.
Right.
You're always, and that's a question, why just those cases? The grand jury, the GBI investigation in John Jankowski came as a result of the word going around that there was going to be a demonstration, and that was the way to ease that the anger at that point in time. Will let them reinvestigate that case because it had already been investigated by local law enforcement, and it was a good job.
If you just join us, we've got John B. Johnson in studio. He's running for district attorney, and just want to reveal some of these. This is GBI press releases that we received on these cases. Here's the one on Michael Baker, and this was. It says this is a GBI press release from Stacey Carson, Special Agent in Charge, August 11, 2023. GBI has arrested and charged Michael Baker, Jr., age 35, of Odom, Wayne County, with 3 counts of rape and 1 count of aggravated sodomy. On Thursday, July 27th, the Wayne County Sheriff's Office and Jesup Police Department requested to GBI investigate a rape allegation made against Baker. The investigation into the original allegation revealed additional victims, all alleging that while interacting with Baker, he provided them with a drink, causing them to black out. During this time, Baker engaged in sexual activity with them. During the investigation, Baker resigned from employment from the Jesup Fire Department. Baker is booked at the Wayne County Jail. Again, this is a GBI investigation. I mean, I talk to these law enforcement officers. They go out, they investigate, they make the arrest, and then it's out of their hands. It goes to the DA's office. But I've talked to many law enforcement officers in Wayne County. I've talked to sheriffs in this circuit. There's a lot of frustration that these cases are being investigated, arrests are being made, but then nothing happens.
That's correct. And I'm a big fan of following a process. If you follow a process, if you do what's right all the time, you don't get in trouble, and you don't have these cases sitting out there. The only benefit that I can tell people is that with a new DA, all these cases have the ability to be looked at again and prosecuted. That's all I can say.
Here's the press release on Wendell Tank Lawson. August 13, 2023, Wayne County Sheriff Chuck Mosley announces that on August 12th, with the assistance of the Jesup PD, there was a search warrant executed at the residence of Deputy Sheriff due to an ongoing investigation into illegal activities. When contact was made with the deputy, he was advised of the reasoning for the search warrant. During the search of the residence, an illegal weapon was discovered. Due to the discovery of the illegal weapon and subsequent felony charges, all the weapons in the residence were seized, as well as the electronic devices the warrant was originally issued for. Deputy Sheriff identified as 46-year-old Wendell J. Lawson. Deputy Lawson has served with the Wayne County Sheriff's Office since 2001, when he began his tenure as a detention officer at the Wayne County Jail. At the time of this release, Deputy Lawson is facing the accusation of possession of a sawed-off shotgun, a felony. Original investigation and reason for the search warrant is ongoing and will not be discussed until its conclusion. Deputy Lawson is currently being held in a jail outside of Wayne County until bond arrangement can be completed. I know at this time he's out on bond at this time, and then of course the rumor mill is that Deputy Tank Lawson knows a lot of skeletons buried and a lot of other people, and they don't want to prosecute him because he's going to tell. Have you heard that?
I have not heard that. That's interesting. But again, if you follow the process, you're working with law enforcement, you know what they're doing, you're helping them because that's our obligation under the law, then these cases get before the grand jury and you deal with them.
And here's another press release. Sheriff Mosley announces that on 23rd, Deputy Weldon Tank Lawson has been arrested for the following: rape, conspiracy to violate Georgia Controlled Substance Act. The investigation was initiated after an allegation of criminal activity involving Lawson was made. Search warrant was conducted on Lawson's home earlier this month for electronic devices concerning new charges. The day of the search warrant, Lawson was arrested for a firearm located during the search. He's currently being held in the Pierce County Detention Center due to security risks. Former deputy knowing the operation of the Wayne County Detention Center. Again, to this date, Lawson's been charged with rape, conspiracy to violate Georgia Controlled Substance Act, violation of the oath of office, possession of sawed-off shotgun, and willful obstruction of law enforcement. But that hasn't been indicted either. I checked with Francis, the clerk of court, and she says they're not indicted. But I asked the DA, and that's what I get. They're being reviewed. So,
well, and I'm going to go back and tell folks.
I said,
something.
and Kelly, I talked to Judge Kelly. He said, he was a former priest. He's had this conversation. Like I said, you don't let these cases sit.
No,
they don't get stronger. They get weaker.
There's a game that can be played, and I've said it before, and said it publicly. In Georgia, a defendant is entitled to be able to go to court if he's arrested and make a petition for bond, and then the judge has the discretion of granting it or not. And generally, as prosecutors, you can oppose bond in cases like this, as Tiffany did, for the reasons that she expressed. There is another law that says that if you do not have a preliminary hearing or an indictment and a defendant is in jail for 90 days, that on day 91, he can petition for bond and the judge has to set a bond. He doesn't have any discretion. He's got to do it. He can decide how much the bond's going to be, but he has to set bond. And in this particular case, what it appears to be is that's the process that they went through, that they waited. They didn't. All they had to have is a hearing, and that would have solved that problem, or an indictment, as we would have done, and it would have solved that problem. And you wouldn't be sitting there 91 days and having to grant bond, a judge, and putting it on a judge to grant a bond.
But isn't it the job of the DA to take it to the grand jury? Isn't it the grand jury's decision? I mean, that's what the frustration is. I keep checking when these cases are going before a grand jury, and they're not going. And the ones that have gone before a grand jury have gotten indictments. I mean, John Ronkowski was indicted. They went to court. Like I said, they've had 2 bond hearings, and their assistant DA, Tiffany Montenegro, yelled to the highest mountain that bond should be denied.
Right.
And then she disappears, and then they come in there, and they had to give them a bond because isn't that law? You can't hold somebody.
That's right. That's the 91-day rule.
91 days. So you can't hold anybody.
Right. And that, well, you can, but they're entitled to a bond. You can set a bond at $2 million.
And this is just Wayne County case. I hear this going on all throughout the circuit. Are you hearing that?
It's
running
in
for
every
DA?
county.
I mean, Jeff Davis says they had a lot of cases drop. Glenn County. I mean, so.
I know in Jeff Davis, looking at last year, by August, I think, is when I checked on it, they had dropped 150-something cases. Just in that 8 months, 9 months.
Just dropped it.
Just dropped them. Dismissed warrants.
So let's get back to the campaign. Like I said, you're out campaigning. So do you have networks in all 5 counties?
I've been going and meeting with the Republican county committees in every county. There are a couple of women groups, Republican groups, that I go to and meet with them. I've been doing that for over a year, working with them. We're at a point now with my opponent running as a Republican that you can't get endorsements from those parties because you got 2 Republicans running, which is a state rule, and that's fine. You know, that's the way it is. But you have to establish the fact that you are part of what they do in every county. I have good relations with Jeff Davis County, good relations with Appling County, good relations with Wayne County. I have been going to 2 groups in Glenn County, so I've got good relations with them, and 2 groups in Camden and good relations with them. And these are people who will be driving the election and running the election and doing the things to force, to let people know what's going on.
Do you see anybody else entering this race?
No.
Or do you think it's just going to be the 2 candidates?
Yes.
So there going to be any debate set up?
Well, I've asked. I've told them I'd love to debate, but I only will do it face-to-face in front of an audience. I'm not going to do a virtual kind of debate because you don't know what's going on in the background behind the camera. But I want people to be able to see me, see him, answer the hard questions. You know, I have a history. I have a record that I've done. More than 250 cases, 50 murders, 12 or better death penalty cases. I have a record. He has none. He in the last 5 years he hadn't tried any cases. So, you know, that is the difference between one of the differences between the 2 of us.
So how do you win this race?
I can get the most
I
votes.
understand that. That's easier said than done.
I know it is
it's
easier.
hard to beat an incumbent. I mean, everybody knows that. I mean,
The incumbents generally start off with about a 10% advantage because they're the incumbent. But one of the things you have to do is highlight in every community what's been going on. I mean, I get phone calls all the time from law enforcement. I get phone calls from victims whose cases have been dropped. I've talked with people who, you know, will you look at my case when you become district attorney? Yeah, I will. That's my responsibility to look at cases that either are still pending or have been dismissed or dropped, or and decide, should this case really be tried again.
Do you see any sheriffs getting involved in this race at all? Because talking to the sheriffs, like I said, they're pretty frustrated as well. I've talked to Chuck Mosley several times, and I keep going back to this John Jankowski case. And like I said, the reason it's so high profile. Remember now, they could have easily walked in. People knew who John Jankowski was. I've told this story. They could have walked in there and tapped him on the shoulder and said, "Mr. Jankowski, you please step outside. We have a warrant for your arrest. We'll take you down there or come down." No, they went in there guns ablazing and made all these accusations and claimed that this was what was going on. And I know that restaurant's not real happy with all that either, because they had to go through a tough time. And they also claimed, since that was just the tip of the iceberg, you're going to see 15, 20 more arrests. Same thing's going on. It's been going on for whatever. And now it just sits there. Yeah. And like I said, their assistant DA yelled and screamed and hollered in court not once but twice, but they've got 11 women sworn affidavits claiming this took place. All these women came forward, and they want to know, where's their justice? And they can't even get. I mean, now they got a GBI investigation that took place, and now we're waiting for their results of that.
Well,
so,
and I've predicted.
And most people fear that it's going to just go away.
Right. I've predicted that there will be a statement made that says I have reviewed this case and I do not find sufficient evidence to prosecute it. And we'll be right back where we were, where the victims were before the demonstration that occurred.
I think you'll see another protest. Like I said, the one lady, Miss Walkaboos, she did an interview with us. She did an interview with TV station Savannah. She's making no bones about it.
Right.
She's stating point blank what took place to her.
Yeah.
So, and she's not the only one, I think. So I think you'll see more protests if that takes place.
Part of the problem that I see is that if you do not have the experience in trying hard cases where there's a little bit of evidence, but you've got a lot of similar transactions that you have to deal with and a way to try them, you have no interest in trying a case. If you've lost 12 in a row, which they had, or 13 in a row, which they had, you have no interest in trying a case because you don't want to lose another one, especially a high-profile case. And that's not just in Wayne County. We had dismissals of cases in Glenn County because the district attorney didn't know how to try a particular case, a murder case. So a person who was involved in the murder case actually set it up is walking free because he didn't know how to try it. And that's part of the problem. If you have no experience in doing those hard things, then the impetus that you have is, if you're an administrator, is to dismiss it.
Yeah. Like I said, for true transparency, like I said, I know Jackie Johnson. I consider Jackie Johnson a friend. I'm like you. I don't think Jackie Johnson did anything wrong. I think the national publicity got involved in all that and just blew it way up. And like I said, those charges still hang on her head for the last several years. But one thing maybe you can tell me, though, this, and I've heard this from several people, there's this one law office that when Jackie Johnson was the DA, their success rate in court was 30%. Since Jackie Johnson's left, their success rate in court is 75%. Have you heard that?
Yes.
Is that true?
Well, it's true that I've heard it.
Right.
Let me say this. I work closely with one of the lawyers.
I saw Jackie Johnson try cases.
I know.
She tried that Eugenia Vaughn case and did an excellent job on the case.
I work with,
she was a good DA in my opinion.
I work with one of the lawyers in that firm, and he's a good friend, and it has been for years. But the problem you have as a prosecutor is you can't let that friendship or the fact that somebody supported you actively or their family supported you actively, you can't let that interfere with the oath that you took fairly and impartially try cases.
And going to the Elmont Auberry case, like I said, I'm not saying those guys got what they truly deserve, but the video is what caused the firestorm. When they first started that case, I tell this story. I went down there and they had all the protesters out there, no justice, no peace, all this, yell, scream, and holler outside the courtroom. And I walked up to this black lady, nice lady. She was a school teacher. I asked her if I could interview her. And she said, sure. And I said, I'm just a dumb reporter from Jesup, Georgia. I just got one question only. And she said, what's that? I said, where was the protest 6 months ago when he got shot and killed? She said, what do you mean? I said, well, I took the video. I said, if my good friend got shot and killed in the middle of the street, we're protesting the next day. We're not waiting for a video to come out 6 months later. Well, I never thought about that.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what caused the firestorm was the
A
video.
lot of it is, and it's media driven.
It was media driven. Yeah. I mean, just, anyway, I just want true transparency. Like I said, I thought Jackie Johnson was an excellent DA. Like I said, she won Appleton, she won Wayne, she won Jeff Davis. She just lost Glenn with that firestorm and that Auburn case. That was the thing. That's why I keep asking you, are you going to be able to distance yourself because you were the assistant DA at the time?
So, I was chief assistant.
And remember the AJC came down and did a piece and all that.
I tell people, I'm surprised you read the AJC. Well, with their liberal agenda,
do you think they're going to fit in there? You think they're going to stay out of this race, or do you think they're going to come back and get involved in it again?
Oh, I expect them. I see stuff on Facebook all the time, quoting the AJC. Look, those folks have an agenda. I don't fit in their agenda. I don't. And they're going to do everything they can do legitimately. They tell part of the truth. When they write a story, they don't tell the whole truth. And it's something that as a prosecutor, a public official, you have to put up with. You can't get in the weeds with them. But they are who they are.
Well, again, we appreciate you coming in. We'll follow the campaign closely. Hopefully your opponent will come in as well. I'd like to talk to him about all these cases and where they're at. Like I said, I'll read his statement once again because, like I said, WIFO-FM has been constantly asking about these high-profile cases, and this is his statement. He says, I'm currently reviewing the GBI case file on Yankowski case, which involves listening to hours of recorded interviews. The Window Tank Lawson case is related to my review of the Yankowski investigation. I'll make a decision regarding both cases when I have reviewed all written reports, reviewed all written statements, and listened to all recorded interviews. Asked about the Michael Baker case, and that's the fireman who was arrested and charged with 3 counts of rape. He says we received the GBI case file on or by January 11th. That case is being reviewed. What needs to be conducted. So,
Bob,
that's the statement.
I'll finish with saying this. Since he's not an in-court prosecutor, he's just an administrator, he ought to have plenty of time to review it, and it should have been done before now.
Well, people are waiting to see how it all plays out, but there's a lot of women, we're looking for justice.
Yeah. Well, I've tried rape cases. I mean, they're not hard to try. They're fact-driven.
And stress this point. That is the hardest thing for a woman to do.
Yes.
To come forward.
Yes.
And because a lot of women just say, I don't want the problem. Right. I don't want to be in court. That's why it's important that these cases be tried, that they get justice, that they get their day in court.
Any kind of sexual assault, whether it involves an adult woman or a minor, any sexual assault has that same problem. It's an embarrassment. They don't want to do that, but you have to have someone who's compassionate, someone who can work with victims, which I've done for 40 years, who can bring out all of the facts and do it in such a way that a jury picks up on it and give them enough information for them to return a verdict.
Well, again, John B. Johnson running for district attorney. We'll follow the election closely, and again, appreciate you coming in. Wish you the best of luck.
My pleasure.
All right. Thanks for coming in. All right. John B. Johnson, our special guest this morning here on the world-famous Butch and Bob Show on WIFO-FM in Jesup, which has been brought to you by First Southern Bank, Van's Barbecue, Murphy Builder Supply, and O'Quinn & Associates.